Welcome back to another
Hello.
Money Tree podcast. You got myself and Adam as usual. We got another co-host today, little Bo, but he's on the hunt for something. He's running around, so apologize if you hear him bark.
Good to be back. Second episode.
Second app. We're
First
trying
one
a couple
went by
different
nice.
cameras right now, so one might die out. We'll see.
Yeah, this is actually our second time doing the second podcast.
Yeah, we had a little bit of someone
Technical
came
difficulties.
in. Bo freaked out. Just everywhere.
Camera stopped recording.
Yeah. So hopefully this one's a little smoother. We're going to kind of pick up where we left off, where we were talking about a couple of the businesses that we had that failed. I know Adam's got a couple more. I think I have
A couple of the businesses that
more.
won too. Not just failures.
Yeah. I think I have another one as well. And then I think one thing we discussed yesterday is having this potential, like this segment in each of the podcasts where we talk about things that we've done or someone that we're interviewing has done that have generated us money, whether that's a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 a month, that you can go and easily implement right away. Kind of like if we think about Adam's, what was the
trade show.
What was it called?
Set up your booth.
Set up your booth. How it was really just about scraping a list, sending
Mailing
them
to
cold emails,
people, coordinating it. It was quick and easy.
Yeah, no upfront cost really.
It's a business that if I took maybe an hour and sat there and described every aspect of it, someone could go and do and make 60 G's first year guaranteed.
Yeah, cool. So anytime we talk about an idea that was relatively easy to execute on, it's something that you guys should really look at. And if you have questions about it or if you'd like more resources around it, just shoot us a message.
Connect with us.
Instagram or on the podcast or wherever, and we can go from there.
So one thing we wanted to just continue on with like where we were going, but I'm going to skip a couple of businesses. And one thing with both you and I is, and I think every entrepreneur, one thing I want to say is that you take a lot of L's. You start businesses and they don't work all the time. And I've learned that there is no shame in taking an L. At least you went and tried. Like you tried a business, especially in these early stages of being an entrepreneur, where like you don't even know really what you're doing.
100%.
You're just kind of throwing a bunch of shit on the wall. Hopefully something sticks.
Yeah.
And then that's it. So like when going through these businesses, there's a lot more stories that I have or different businesses that I could tell you about that I tried and then maybe got a sale. Maybe it made $500 and then I moved on to something else. So I'm just like kind of breezing through, and I think you are too, like just breezing through some things that, I mean, we spoke yesterday. You said you had one that was the same as mine, where it was like turning restaurant websites into mobile websites. So like,
yeah.
But they were both kind of short-lived.
The thing is just like try things.
Yeah.
Just get used to trying. You're going to find like you might be a couple weeks into something and realize I actually don't enjoy this, and then you'll stop doing it.
Yeah.
But you want to just try as much as you can. So let's jump into this other business that you had around the Keurig or coffee pots. I think that one's pretty interesting.
Okay, so this was a business, and I learned a ton from this business because it was the first one that I had done with a team of people. All of my businesses that I had done up until this point maybe had one other person with it that I was kind of the leader, and then there was just one other person helping me with it. But this one was a true 3-person partnership. Company was like split 3 ways. First lesson learned is that we didn't really assign who had what duty. So I think that was a big trouble in the get-go because for every decision that needed to be made about this business, it took 3 people's approval. And it turned into not being able to like move quickly enough at the start of a business. Like moving quickly at the very start of a business is huge. Being able to pivot, being able to just make a decision and go and do it is like the way that things move forward. And when it was like, okay, I want to go in this direction, do you guys like that? Or I've got 10 different things to go over. When can we meet? And the 3 of us can't find times in our schedules to meet until 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And then you're there like sitting like, okay, well, like, should we do this? Or like, am I just going to put this business on pause for 2 weeks? Like, what's that even?
part of that is also like choosing the right partners
100%.
is so important, and it's hard to figure that out. Soon we'll get into how Adam and I met, but there's a difference of forcing something and then having something just naturally work out.
Yeah, and organically just like kind of turn into
Yeah.
a good partnership. Okay, so I'll tell you about the business. It was a business called Pod Up. And what we did was brand Keurig coffee pods for individual coffee shops. So the coffee shop just around the corner could have their own brand of Keurigs that they could sell at the store.
That's wicked. That's a good idea.
Really good idea. I still don't see anybody doing it well. White label, like coffee pods. I think I have a few reasons why there's no one doing it that well. It's a lot. To do a small run of coffee pods is very difficult, and that's something that we find. Is a small run, I mean like 5,000 pods or 500 pods, 1,000 pods, 2,000 pods, something like that.
Okay, but you were putting the logos on yourself.
Yes.
So what was the hard part of what you're talking about there? Was it when you're saying a 5,000 run? Is it doing the logos and stuff the hard part, or was it like
to get production costs so low, like essentially
be worth it? Yeah, minimum quantities and stuff like that.
Yes, because we had what we did, created this whole business. When I say created a whole business, like what's that even mean? It means we made came up with an idea and built a website.
Yeah.
Like like it's not like there's
no LLC created.
Yeah, no, there wasn't.
Yeah.
So essentially, like we built this website, had all the information, we laid out how the process was going to go, and you know me, I'm down to just like go and fucking make it happen.
Yeah.
So immediately, like once we were prepped, one of the guys that started the business with us was good at Photoshop, so he came up with like a mock image of like the box, what it's going to look like in the end, and what the pods will look like. And we were looking around at different things online to like buy a machine and do it ourselves. We were like, okay, we could just do it ourselves. We can spend $500 on a machine, and it's like you just pull like a slot
press.
machine. Yeah,
Yep.
you just like press it, pull it down. It like you put the coffee in yourself, press it down, and boom, out pops a pod.
So how did you reach out to, who are you selling to?
So we were selling to coffee shops.
Not like the grocery stores or something?
No, because it needed to be like our ideal client was just like a mom and pop coffee shop.
And they would sell it at their own coffee shop?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we sell them 200 boxes. They just display it at their coffee shop. Kind of the same way that Tim Hortons or Starbucks just has pods like in a display case that you can like purchase.
So how
did
you talk to customers?
Yeah, so what I did, I immediately just went out and started to try and sell this. I forget how I got my list. I got a list from somewhere, and maybe just emailed, or maybe I just started to call right away, just straight dialing numbers. Like I remember sitting in George Brown. I was at George Brown at the time. Funny thing about George Brown, I only went there. I didn't even go there for a full year, but I worked out of the school for a solid year and a half. I would just go to the school anyways and find an empty classroom and sit there and run my business out of George Brown.
That's amazing.
Use their Wi-Fi and just move there. No one would bug me either. That rings around to the same point of if you just look like you know what you're doing, no one bugs you.
Yeah.
I would just walk in and I'd just take a classroom, and then if someone came to, I'd be just like, oh, sorry, I was just doing work.
Yeah, that's funny.
So anyways, I found a guy. I found a guy that was in for it. I was just like cold calling, somehow ended up on the phone with this dude and sold him on the fact that we were going to send him 200 boxes, like 2,000 pods.
How much?
10 pods a box. Don't remember. I think our cost was pretty high because, like I said, it was so hard to get low. But we figured like we'll wing it. We'll just like maybe break even on these first couple, make a couple bucks. And that way we can afford a machine to then start pressing these and then start doing it. It was kind of just like, we'll wing it until we get there. So I made a sale to this guy. I think he paid a little bit off the bat. And then he was going to pay the rest of the invoice once we had like shipped out his box. He was in Miami too. This was not a close like.
Yeah, it wasn't a contact or someone you know or referral. Or
no,
whatever.
not at all. So I made this promise to this dude that we were going to ship him these coffees, and then we were like, oh shit, we got to package these things. Like, we got to figure this out. And that's kind of where it all fell apart. Is we started to package these things. It was so hard to package. We tried, since we didn't have the machine, we had to do it with an iron.
Oh,
So like, we ordered the tops of the pods, we ordered the empty pods, we ordered the coffee to put in the pods, packaged it, and then we had to set up. I realized that this is an audio podcast. We do have a video version of it, but it was like, we'd set the pod up, we'd put the top on top, and then press an iron down so that it would stick the tin
like an
foil.
iron that you'd iron your shirt with.
Yes. So it would stick the tin foil, and it was just a mess. Like, things would be off to the side. Like, I think we only made 2 boxes, which would have been like 20 pods or something like that, but we must have ran through 50 of them.
So what'd you do though? Like, you obviously didn't deliver this to the guy.
We delivered the samples. Yes.
Oh, the samples.
So we
he
got
wanted
it-
samples first.
Yeah.
Okay.
To just confirm packaging. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
printed the packaging, we printed the tops, we printed everything, and we did 2 boxes of them. 20 pods or something like
Yeah.
that. 10 pods a box. Delivered the samples. And then he was up for it. He was in. He was going to do the full order. And I know we were almost hoping that he wouldn't, just because it was such a nightmare
It was difficult. Yeah.
to even pull off 20 of these pods, let alone 2,000 of them. I don't know how we would have done it. And so that's kind of where it fell apart, was just like, the other 2 weren't scrappy the same way that we are, in the sense that like, they were down to just like fucking sweat it out and just like make this order happen. And I don't really remember how the full thing ended, like what the true stop was. It was kind of just like fizzled out, like. But I ran into the same problem that I did with the other business. I had this one that I didn't speak about on here, that was with my brother, and it kind of turned into a business that was with 1 or more people, myself or my brother or myself and these 2 other business partners, and it felt like I kind of just took over. Every time I worked with someone else, I took over, and it was like, it was me doing the work. I went and got the sale. I was the one that was like either driving this website setup or driving getting these pods done, or, you know, like making the cold calls or sending cold emails. So it was always just like, never really worked when I did it with anybody else.
That's the importance of finding a good partner.
Yeah.
Is what that comes down to.
Yeah. And someone that knows just as much as you. I think that's another big
Not
thing.
necessarily as much as you, but that's a plus, but also knowing different things than you.
Yeah, and can bring the same amount of value as you.
Yeah.
Maybe in a different area
In a different
they bring
area.
value. But in all of these early businesses that I had, like, it just kind of felt like I was bringing the value. I had a Photoshop guy, like, for example, on that other one, but I was always just the grinder.
Yeah.
Like, I was the one that was like,
It's a mindset. Some people want it. Some people want to try it.
yeah.
There's a big difference there, which kind of segues me into this course that I remember when I was at Top Hat, I convinced, like, I don't know, there was probably 8 of us that bought this course. It was $8,000. It was
Whew.
essentially how to take an idea or how to find a niche, find a problem in that niche, and then create a business around that. So what I actually liked about this course was they taught you one of the first things they taught you was this thing called Green Eyes, where everything you looked at, you try to understand how that made money. How did that come to exist?
And I think both of us naturally have that.
Absolutely. And it's like super beneficial. It's curiosity at the end of the day. It's just curiosity of like, how does that, some kids have this where it's like, how does that work? How does that work? But
Yeah.
it's just changing it into more of an adulthood and being like, how does that make money?
Yeah. And I think we see that all the time. Like, we'll look at things or businesses and be like, how is that even profitable?
Yeah.
Or like, how did they afford to do that for that cheap? Like, what's happening here to make this business work the way that it's working?
And what's interesting, a lot of businesses that do very well are like the non-sexy businesses that you've never heard of.
Yeah, 100%.
And they might have huge exits or huge revenue and stuff, which is pretty interesting. So you don't necessarily have to go start like a cool new startup or tech company or whatever if it's just not your thing. So essentially what this course taught you was look at things, understand how they make money, and then find a niche. So I stuck with that whole dental niche. They have money. they can make a lot of money from if you help them, you can actually
Like
drive
one-
a lot of revenue.
Yep.
One Invisalign client can be
brings
like a
a
couple
lot.
$1,000. So I stuck with them. So the first thing I did is I went on Upwork. I found someone to go and scrape all dental websites for their contact information, the owner's name, and the email in Canada and the United States. So I think I ended up. It definitely wasn't all of them, but I ended up with like a pretty substantial list of maybe a couple thousand. And then I sent out blast emails, and the email was along the lines of, I'm a software developer or a software entrepreneur. I'm looking to interview you to discuss any sort of problems or pains that are common amongst you and your peers in the dental space.
Yeah, it's a great way of going about that. We still kind of do that same type messaging.
Yeah, it works well, like asking for advice. And then, or interviewing them type of thing.
Yeah.
And then from there, if they said yes, I'd get on the phone. I'd try to find a trend of the same pain points that some of them may have. And then eventually, after talking to like maybe 10 or 20 of them, I did find that there was a trend. And then the next goal was to be like, hey, okay, this is the problem. If there was a solution to this and it costs roughly this much money, is that something that you would pay for? Some said yes, some said no.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal was to get them to pre-buy it, like buy a lifetime subscription, essentially, if you're going to do a monthly SaaS product.
Full pop.
So you essentially, like, let's say you're charging $100 or $200 a month. You would go to them and say, hey, you pay me $1,500 up front. You get lifetime access.
Yep.
And that's going to fund the development of the build. So you do that from like 5 to 10 people. Then you have 5 to 10 grand. You don't need to know how to develop this product or build this product. You're going to go and then hire it out.
Yep. And a lot of SaaS companies still do this. Like that's a
Tons of them,
regular
yeah.
thing to this day.
And it's just, it wasn't something that I ended up getting to that point. I ended up going from there into another sales role at a company. I was, I think, the first sales rep, which actually, like, I think is a good continuation of this. I went from there to, it's kind of, you're kind of being entrepreneurial in companies. There, I think there's a thing is like internal entrepreneurs in companies.
Yep.
People that can like come up with ideas, execute on ideas, and not really need the support, but they have the resources.
Yep.
Which is really good. And it's sometimes great for people that don't necessarily want to go and take that risk on their own.
Yeah, we taught with one, that class we mentioned in the first podcast that we taught with. There was the guy, Alex Shapiro. Is that his last name?
Shiplo.
He is an internal entrepreneur, I would say. Really smart dude. He gave a great talk. Like that was my favorite part of the whole weekend was listening to his.
Yeah, it was really good. He's helped a lot of companies grow substantially through his growth and his marketing experience. And he mentioned in the talk that he hasn't taken that kind of leap in the last couple of years to go and try his own thing, but he knows it's something that he's eventually going to have to do just to fulfill his own wants and needs. So there's definitely a place for that. So when I was at Presley, I was the only sales rep. It was my job to figure out how to get customers. I think they had a sales rep before me. I'm not sure, but at the time I was the only one. And after a while of like crazy amounts of cold calls and cold emails, I started to just get burnt out, which then led me to kind of where we're at now. So it led me to figure out how do I go and generate my own leads. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was looking at 2 different platforms, Google AdWords or Facebook ads. And to me, I just kind of gravitated to Facebook.
It was cooler. Facebook has always been cooler. Like I think Google,
it was newer, yeah.
Google was cooler before we were in it. It was like the OG.
Yeah, I agree.
And then Facebook ads came out and they were like the new sexy, like Facebook ads. Everyone wanted a Facebook ad agency. Everyone wanted to run Facebook ads. It was like the hot new thing. Everyone was creating courses on Facebook ads. Like,
well, the good thing with Facebook at the time and currently is there's like 2 billion people on Facebook. Like everyone had a Facebook account, so it wasn't a matter of is your customer's attention there.
They're there.
They were there. It's just how do you get them to convert. So for me, I chose Facebook, and I started a bunch of e-commerce stores, which we can get into in another podcast one day. But it was typically that classic like drop shipping model: order products from China, advertise them, and then you don't actually ever have to hold the inventory. When someone buys, you buy the product at your cost and you send it to them.
Yep.
So that's how I started learning, and I realized I was pretty good at that. And then one day I was at Presley and I woke up that morning. I lived right down the road from Presley. I woke up that morning and I just had this weird feeling in my gut that I was getting fired. I had never been fired from a job in my life.
That's so strange.
It was
Wait,
super
was
weird.
it rocky? Like where
No.
your boss?
So I was doing well. I think I forget the amount of money I generated at the time. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say it, but it was like it was definitely like more than 6 figures annual recurring revenue. My salary at the time might have been like $50K. So I was
Yeah,
like,
I think I remembered you telling me what they paid you, and it was like shockingly low.
no, that was Top Hat. Top Hat was 25K.
Okay, yeah.
So Presley, I think, was like 50K. I was definitely drawing in more business than my cost,
Yeah.
for sure. And I got along with everyone, but
Yep.
me and the CEO would just like grind heads. So
Was it a
say
small enough company that
Yeah,
you
it
would
was
talk to the CEO?
maybe less than 20 people?
Oh, okay.
And we would just butt heads all the time
Yep.
because I'm stubborn and he's got a vision, obviously. And I was like, hey, this is what I want to try for Presley to generate leads and stuff. And we didn't really have a marketing team at the time. There was no inbound.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to the office that day, and he's like, Gord, can you come into the conference room? And I was like,
You
wow,
knew
I'm
it.
getting fired. And
It's so strange that you had that gut feeling and
Super
then it
weird.
happened.
And then I got fired. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember sitting there and asking why. And he looked at me and was like, don't really have a reason. And I was like, I just want to know what I can do better, man. Like,
Yeah.
and I think it was a combo of things. Obviously, maybe at the time, like me and him butting heads wasn't a great culture fit. There was a gentleman that was that came in as kind of an advisor and then had a lot of experience with some big enterprises, and they want to do some enterprise deals. I was doing some SMB, small business stuff, small medium business, and then he left. So they needed someone with a quote unquote a bigger Rolodex than myself to go after these enterprise, which I just didn't have I hadn't tried to go after the enterprise, but that's neither here nor there. But that allowed me to be like, if it's that much of a risk for work for someone,
Like that you can just get fired.
like for
Like you
no
can be
reason,
doing well. You can be.
I was like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with working for people. For me, it was just like, that was just, that's not my, I'm taking the same amount of risk in my own mind, starting my own thing, than I am going and working for someone. That was my thought process.
Well, you know what I was thinking as you were going through this, and this was a difference between your journey and mine, is that you were an entrepreneur that but you always had jobs. So even at Top Hat or wherever it was that you were, where you were buying this course to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah, that was Top Hat.
you had a job.
Yeah.
And then you wanted to do Facebook ads, but you were at another company as
Yeah.
well. So I think a big difference between our like entrepreneurial journey is that I let set up your booth sustain me. That was my job. Even though it was my company, that was my job, and I did testing grounds. I had 2 or 3 failed businesses. Well, they are obviously failed now, but businesses that I tried the same way you did, but my job, the one that I hated, I felt like my day-to-day was set up your booth.
Yeah. When you were it was CDI, wasn't it?
Yeah. Computers.
How did that
was the
end?
software computers. I quit.
Did you have income already?
No. I made a big chunk though.
So you had money to like hold
I
you over
had
for a bit.
enough money to sustain for I think at least a year.
Yeah, so I think that's the difference. I like from Top Hat, I had 25K a year salary.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah,
even,
so you
I could
couldn't
barely
sustain.
get to work.
Yeah, yeah, let alone like sustain for an
Yeah.
extra year.
And
Yeah,
then-
no, from CDI, you're right. I did have a huge one up there because that allowed me, having a big chunk of cash like that, allowed me to say, okay, I'm going to go to school and I don't have to worry about working. I know I have this cash.
Yeah, and that's also like not for people listening. That's not the reality of a lot of situations. Like a lot
Yeah.
of people are going to have to. They might not be making enough, or they have other expenses. They might have kids. They have whatever. There's a lot of other variables that won't allow them to like save up a big chunk to be able to step away and try something. So going the route where I did, if you do want to do your own thing, having a job that produces income and then just like grinding it out
Yeah.
throughout the nights is what you can do to do that.
I took a major hit from CDI. I do want to get into the last business that I created, which was the one that kind of brought me to you and the one that taught me online advertising. And it was the social media business. Sorry, Gord's just adjusting the cameras.
One of the memory cards are full. So hopefully the other one keeps up.
I was going to say I did want to get into a different business, but I took a major hit like from when I left CDI. You want to hear that story?
Yeah.
I essentially I had this one big contract that was going to close. I knew I was leaving. I had registered for school, so I knew like at least a month ahead of time. And I had told my boss. My boss was a super cool guy. He was actually great. He was really mean. He was really like, get your shit together, get on that fucking phone, like make it happen. At the time, it sucked, but in hindsight, it was like the greatest thing ever that he would just like force me to work. And I had this deal right when I was leaving CDI, where it was going to pay me $7,000 in commission, over $7,000 in commission.
Yeah, it's a big chunk.
And it was a done deal. It was like the guy had agreed to it. It was a PO. The way that a lot of these educational deal goes is they go to RFP, which is like they request for proposal.
Yeah. Anyone can apply to be a vendor.
Anyone can apply. I won it. It was good to go. They just had to go and get like funding afterwards, whatever. It was done. I talked to the guy. I sold to him all the time. He was one of my first clients ever, like first guy I ever sold something to. So I worked with him for 2 years. It was cool. And that money, that $7,000 was in my pocket. It was already spent. Like
yeah, you've already banked on that.
I know I have this money.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a question. It was just like good to go. And the week before I left, it fell apart.
What happened? Just like high level, what happened?
High level, didn't have budget. Couldn't pull together the budget. It was like a $50,000 or $60,000 deal.
Get used to that.
Yeah.
When you're in business.
Well, major lesson learned. Don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Yeah, for sure.
I was spending it. I knew that this money was
not yours until it's in the bank.
And that was a major lesson as like, it's exactly, money is not yours. Don't count it until it's in the bank.
Yeah, 100%.
Luckily I had enough already that like it wasn't, I mean, it was a big hit. Don't get me wrong. That was like, that would have given me an extra 30%. Maybe I only had $30,000 or something. Like I did have a good chunk, but like that $7,000 like meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And
that's a lot.
Fucking lost it.
That's a lot to bank on.
That's a lot for anybody, $7,000.
Especially
like,
to bank on and then not get
exactly. Like I'm leaving work and I'm going to school and I need cash.
Yeah.
That company was super nice to me though. I loved all of them.
Yeah,
and it's
I know people
huge.
that work there still. It's big.
It's big. When I started there was maybe 80 people, and I think they're well over 300 now. They're big.
Yeah.
It was very family oriented.
So how did that get you into ads? You said this was going to transition to you into ads.
No, the other business that I did after Set Up Your Booth. I don't know how I got into the story about how I lost out on that 7Gs.
That's just rambling. I'll go back to how I got into ads.
Let me hear how you got into ads, and then I'll go into how I got into it.
I left. I got fired from Presley. I had to figure out, at the time I was just starting to figure out Facebook ads to be able to learn how to generate. The goal of that was to learn how to generate my own leads.
Yeah.
As a salesperson.
At Presley.
Yeah. Never got to that point. I was in, I think the first e-commerce store I failed miserably. The second, I'll breeze through these because we can go into these on another date, but the second one almost broke even. And then the third one was doing like 20, 30K a month in the first month. And that was all through Facebook. No other advertising. I didn't know how to do any other ads.
Yep.
And then from there, because of being in that startup world, people that I knew that were in startups would be like, hey, if like they would see how I was doing with the drop shipping stores. And they're like, hey, you're pretty good at Facebook ads. Can you either A, help us for free, teach me something, or eventually got to the point where they're like, hey, can you run Facebook ads for us, for lead gen or for whatever it was? So I started doing a bunch of freelance stuff where I was getting these like random referrals. At the time, I didn't know how to charge.
Yeah. So what? Do you have any idea what you were charging?
$500. I was like, yeah, $500 a month, no problem. I'll help you out.
That
I didn't even have
hurts.
a concept of like the more you spend on ads, the more time is involved,
Yeah.
the more strategies you need. And then I distinctly remember being on a sales call one day from someone that was referred to me. Didn't know the guy, but we had a mutual connection. And actually, I went from 500 to like 1,500. And then this guy, I remember just sitting there and being like, how about 4,500?
You had some balls on you that day.
Yeah. And he just went, sure. And I was like, holy shit.
Wow.
If you don't ask, you will not receive.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I was still providing so much more value than that $4,500 was worth.
Yeah, like you were bringing.
They had applications for an education program that were like $12,000 or $15,000
Yep.
to get in, and we were generating so much money through it.
Yeah, so
it
he
was
was
like
fine with
nothing.
the-
Yeah,
yeah.
he didn't care. And that's how I got into it.
Okay, can I ask you a question though?
Yes.
You said you had a couple stores.
Yeah.
First one failed. Second one broke even. But my question is like after the first drop shipping store that you did failed, why did you keep going?
Because I had this thing in my mind where just from learning about drop shipping that it might be the products. That's the issue. So then each store, I forget what that first store was. It might have been a general product store.
Yep.
And there might have been like one product that I was like, oh, that did all right. And I tried another store, niche down
On that product.
on that product. And that one like kind of broke even. Mm-hmm. And then I found another product, set of products that I knew would crush.
Okay, so you even though it failed and I guess at the end of it was ROI negative, no ROI, you did see some like a slight win in there somewhere.
Yeah, I did. I saw like a break even.
Yeah.
And a break even is a win on ads because then
Break
you can
even is
always
a
like
win.
upsell on email or
100%.
whatever. You have a customer list at that point. You can retarget.
You can get cheaper product. You
Yeah,
can
yeah.
get cheaper acquisition. Yeah. Break even. That's one thing I still tell clients or people I'm on sales calls with is that if you're breaking even first month, that's a win.
Yeah, obviously the goal is to scale and like have really high ROAS or return on ad spend. But when you're testing, if you're breaking even, that is a win. Yeah,
That's great.
because then you'll have some like good campaigns. You'll have some bad campaigns. If it averages out to like a break even, you can scale the good campaigns and
Yeah.
get rid of the
Cut
bad
all the
campaigns.
losers, scale the winners.
Yeah, totally.
And I guess we still model that way. Like we've, I guess, obviously got much more sophisticated now in how we
Yeah,
test, but like the same basic concept of like test, cut the losers, scale the winners still stands to this day for people that spend $100,000 a month on ads.
yeah. And that kind of like leads us to which I think we're gonna have to get into on another episode based off of we have client meetings coming up. Is how Adam and I met was through this like mutual knowledge of ads.
Okay, well, because I was the Google ad person.
Yeah, and I
you
didn't know
always knew
Google.
Facebook ads. I
Yeah.
always knew Google ads.
Yeah, and he was doing. You weren't even freelancing really at the time though.
No,
I remember I had a client and I was like, "Yo, can you do Google ads?" And you're like, "Yeah,
Sure.
I'm like, do you want to take on a client
yeah, like sure.
that needed Google ads?" And that's how like we originally started working together. But we've known each other for a long time. We just
Yeah.
weren't like friends really.
No,
were
we had
acquaintances.
friends of friends.
Yeah.
Saw each other at parties.
Yeah, so it
Things
was,
like that. Maybe a couple messages back and forth or something like that. When
Yeah.
I remember when I found that first scraping win, I hooked you up with an email list, like
yeah.
small things.
Yeah, I think I was trying to use that for dentists.
Yeah.
And now Adam and I own an agency together and another company, Conversify, which has another two
partner.
people involved as well. But I think those we're gonna have to save for another time.
So yeah, we're at 34 minutes here. So I why don't I fast forward and get into how I started ads, online ads.
Okay.
So it was straight from set up your booth. Again, this was my base. Set up your booth was like my core. Like
Yeah,
that
where
was
you
what was
learned a bunch
bringing
of
me money.
skills
That
and
was
stuff.
like teaching me a ton. But I was so sick of a labor business. I don't know if I even stressed this in the last podcast. Labor businesses are horrible. hiring people, making them do temp work where they work 3 hours, something like that. It's just like,
They were horrible for you though.
it's a logistical nightmare.
Yeah. It's hard. Yeah.
It's hard. It was hard. Yes.
It's hard work.
And, but I could never stray from it because it was my base. I didn't have a job. Like I had to do this to just like continue eating, continue living. Like I had to have set up your booth.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to get out of it. So eventually, it was a lot of things that I did, a lot of businesses that I tried, but then eventually I'm like, okay, I'm getting out of this. I'm creating something that's going to make me more money than Set Up Your Booth is making, and I'm going to shut this thing down.
Yeah.
Huge lesson learned was I was the business, which sucked because I couldn't go and sell the business without me.
Yeah.
Because I was the one that did everything. So that was another like major issue that I learned from that business is like, when you are the business, you can't go sell the business because when you leave, the business just stops.
Yeah.
So anyways, I created this. It was a social media posting platform. So there's these companies called Hootsuite, if anyone knows that, where it's like you can schedule your Instagram posts. You schedule Twitter posts, schedule Facebook posts. It was a relatively new thing at the time to go and like schedule 10 posts. So that way, like you can just spend an hour at the start of the week and then it'll have postings throughout the week. You schedule all 10 or something like that all at once. So I found this like white label software that would do that. You could brand it your own software. And I could go and charge whatever I wanted, and then I would just pay this company $20 a month per user that I then signed up for it, all branded my own. They had like, it was all built out for you, everything.
Another reason why you don't need to like have technical skill to necessarily start something.
Yeah. Go Google white label,
Whatever.
X, whatever you want to do.
Whatever it is you're interested
and you can find it. So that's, I think, exactly what I did. This company was out of the UK. I just did like, I don't even know why I picked social media. I don't even know how I came across it. It was just like,
Probably read a post of someone doing something similar. And we're like, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah.
So obviously you had to market that.
Had to market it. So I did what I knew. I scraped email lists. I cold emailed people and none of it worked. I couldn't get a fucking client for the life of it. Maybe I got one or two, but these people were only paying $30 a month. So it was like,
Yeah. The time investment wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth it. It was just horrible. I would never be able to have it make more money than Set Up Your Booth and finally exit that. And so I turned to Google Ads. That was my first, like, okay, let me just try and do some advertising for this. And so I didn't know what I was doing at the time. It was like my first time like going into Google Ads. I had nobody that I had that mentored me. I had nobody that like, I watched YouTube videos. That was like as close as I got to a mentor. I like read a bunch of blog posts, maybe even joined some Facebook groups on and asked people, but that was kind of it. And all of my keywords in this were like social media posting online, schedule posts, things like that, like everything that you could imagine. And then I very quickly realized with these ads that the only thing people cared about was more followers.
Was the result.
They didn't want, you wanted to schedule your post, but the result of you scheduling your post was growing your following.
Yeah.
And getting more likes.
Yeah.
And having more engaging shit.
That's a really good thing to touch on though. Understanding what your product or service or whatever you're looking into selling or creating, what is the result of it?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter like if you're selling, for us, like when we run ads for people, it's not about necessarily always driving revenue. It's like, what's the result of that?
Yeah, and this was something that the speaker that I was talking about earlier actually mentioned, where it's like the 5 whys. So you just keep asking why until you really get to the point. So like, just to give you some context of that, it would be like, okay, I want to schedule my social media posts. Why?
Yeah.
I want a bigger following.
Why?
Because I want to turn this into a business, whatever. You just keep asking why, and then you truly drill into the core of like what people are after.
Yeah.
When maybe it's like they're searching for a social media poster.
Yeah.
But really what they want is like more respect from their peers.
Yeah. So I know where you're transitioning into with the follower stuff,
Yeah.
we're saving that because that's a good one.
Okay.
And we have a client call in 3 minutes.
This was 40 minutes anyways.
Yeah,
This
that we
breezed
gotta
by.
hop on. So takeaways, always understand why you're selling something, whether that's your own software or your own service or something. Why are people buying that? What's the result? Don't sell them just like something super high level.
Just
Figure out what the
trying
result
a
is.
business, just going out, making it happen. Don't
Super
worry if
important.
it fails.
Yeah, especially if it's not going to cost you much.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to quit your job to try and start a business.
100%.
And then white labeling. So if you don't have the technical skill set, being able to go and find a product that's already built and then just learning how to market it yourself.
Well, white labeling or the tactic that you took, which was
Find a problem, get
solve
someone
it.
to build the solution, but get them to prepay for it.
Yeah.
So things to take away. Either way, we'll be back in probably a day or so.
I completely forgot
This
to
is
hit
episode
the
3.
applause button that I was going to
Hit that
applause
right
myself
now.
at some point. Thank you. Studio audience.
We got a great live audience. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And we'll catch up with you on the next episode.
Peace.